Welcome to Democratic Television, a program of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party that brings insights, perspectives, and attitudes of our always thoughtful Democratic guests. Today we're joined by the Board of Supervisors President, Dave Cortese. Dave, thanks for being on Democratic Television today.
Glad to be here, Steve.
Well, you have been an institution, the Cortese family in the Valley for generations. We'll talk about that. But first, you grew up right in Evergreen, or?
Yeah, I was actually born at the Fort Ord Army Hospital. My father was one of those guys that signed up for ROTC at Santa Clara University to kind of try to work his way through the Korean conflict, let's say, and he ended up getting his orders, getting trained at Fort Sill, moved to Fort Ord, and I ended up being born there and almost immediately moved to Evergreen.
No kidding.
1956, and my grandfather, who was an orchardist, heavily involved in agriculture in the valley, had just acquired a piece of property, an orchard, mostly apricots and prunes then, later became cherries, right on San Felipe Road in Evergreen, which is right. The property would be right next to Evergreen Valley College.
Oh, okay.
That's where I grew up.
Very nice. So you are a very local boy.
Very local.
Yeah. So, well, congratulations. And that may explain why you've had a long career in public service and a real commitment to the area. You've been on the East Side School Board, served in the San Jose City Council, now are on the Board of Supervisors, and are currently the president of the board. What did I leave out? Planning Commission?
No, I don't think you left out anything too significant. Of course, every one of those jobs, as elected officials know, and those close to elected officials, like our great staffs, comes with a whole bunch of other assignments. So today I also serve on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, the VTA, and numerous other committees and commissions. And that's kind of been the pattern all the way along. It's the same thing when you're a council member at the city of San Jose, which is a full-time position.
Right.
You get that full-time position, and then you get about 6 more things that are the equivalent of being on 6 school boards involving other areas of government.
And you maybe didn't read the fine print when you signed up to run.
Oh, I remember telling my wife, Patty, who's obviously been the biggest supporter in my life, I'm so happy now because when I was a school board member, I was running my family's business, the sort of the remnant of the agricultural business, right out on McKee Road in East San Jose is where my office was. And I had gone to law school at night. I had done all these other things.
While working full-time.
While working full-time, and I told her, I'm going to be so happy to go to the city council because it's just one job. I just have one thing to concentrate on every day. Boy, was I in for a surprise.
Now give us a little background on the family, because something inspired you to run for office. I know it was in your genes or something.
Well, I suppose there's a little bit of it that's in your blood. I think there's actually something probably literal about that. But I grew up with my father being kind of the progressive of his time. He was the first Democrat elected to the Board of Supervisors, kind of came out of nowhere, ran against...
Back in the 70s?
1968.
Oh, 68.
Which is, I know for Democrats everywhere will recognize that as kind of a transformational year. And it was a transformational year for the Board of Supervisors and for this community at large. Social unrest, but social change. The first Democrat elected to the Board of Supervisors in modern history, so it probably means the first Democrat, period. And so I was influenced by all of that. I was influenced, by the presidential election that year, Bobby Kennedy running. As a little boy, of course, I was as impacted as anybody by Jack Kennedy's assassination, and all of those things were having an effect on me. So I was actually kind of a rabble-rouser, encouraging my father to run for county supervisor, as opposed to somebody who was kind of dragged along or groomed in any way. I just always had an interest in it. But again, part of the interest came from watching him stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves, even before he was elected. I was around him where migrant farm workers who wanted to gain citizenship used to come to him and ask for help. Sometimes the same guys would come back and say, "Help me! I'm the breadwinner, and I'm trying to avoid the draft in a fair and positive way." And I'd see him on the phone late at night, sometimes debating and arguing those issues with people. Had a big influence on me.
Oh, wow. So at some point then you decided to run. You ran for the East Side School Board. You won. And how did you like serving in that capacity? You're a volunteer. You're working full-time, going to school, getting your law degree, having a family.
Right. And it was very rewarding for me. To this day, I still look at that and remember that as one of the most rewarding areas of public service that I've served in. People told me, you know, I was crazy. I was coming out of a business background, as you just described. I had a lot of things going on. And there were those friends, you know, who came to me and said, "Why do you want to do that? I mean, you're almost guaranteed to get threatened with some kind of political consequences within 3 months on the job. You know, it's kind of a volatile environment working on a school board. There's a lot of tension. It's emotional for people if something's happening that's going to impact their kids. But it's also the kind of job where you can make a decision with 4 of your colleagues, just 3 of 5 of us, could positively change the lives of 25,000 kids in a stroke. And I just found that to be a terrific thing, and it really inspired me to go on in public service.
Of course, I know that being on a school board, from what I've heard from my friends, is not a simple thing. You get thick packets every week that you have to really understand and digest if you're going to do the job that you were elected to do. I also know of people who didn't do that work. They tried to fake their way through it, and that must have been frustrating when you saw that people took those kinds of shortcuts. Not that your colleagues did, but...
All these jobs, whether part-time or full-time, if you're going to do the job the way that you really should, it's an enormous amount of time. In my opinion, a school board member who doesn't put 15 or 20 hours a week in, which is really the equivalent of a significant part-time job, on top of your day job, if you don't do that, you're not going to be doing the job right. You need to be out, you need to be visiting schools, you need to be reading those packets, you need to be asking your own questions and getting your own information. Just amplify that by a huge magnitude when you take on a full-time position like a San Jose City Council person, or what I'm doing now on the Board of Supervisors. So I remember speaking in front of a bunch of retirees one luncheon day, and somebody said, you know, in the Q&A period, "How many hours a week do you put in?" And I said, "Well, why don't we just calculate it right here? I have my calendar with me. Let's just add up a typical week." And it was, that week was 65 hours. You know, and I was kind of looking at it as a fairly, you know, modest week in terms of activity. But you got weekends, you got nights, you got days, and I think most people understand that. But most people probably don't understand that the majority, not all, like you said, but the majority of elected officials would be pretty hard to keep up with on a day-to-day basis if you were trying to follow them around.
Now, I think you have an extraordinary asset, although that's probably not the right way to describe her, in Patty, someone who's just so well respected in the community, and maybe someday we'll see her run for office, or not.
She's so active. You know, going back to how much time it takes to be an elected official, I was just telling the other day, maybe you should, you know, run for office because you're already putting that kind of time in. And she is. She loves to be involved in mentoring activities. She's devoted a large part of her life to at-risk youth. Both of us have worked very much in the nonviolence movement, locally, nationally, even at a global level. But yeah, when you couldn't ask for a better partner to be involved in community service, government service, social justice than Patty Cortese. I love her.
So we'll move on from that and ask you about running for the city council. A seat opened up. This is your district. You grew up there. You made the leap, and obviously it worked out well for you. That transitioned you from part-time on your own time to a full-time position. What worked for you there? What did you like about that kind of thing?
Well, you know, you make a lot of decisions as a San Jose City Council member that are kind of routine, you know, for somebody who's really interested in social justice issues. For example, if you looked at the typical agenda for a council person, about 80 to 85% of the votes are land use.
Yeah.
You know, people are arguing about what would seem like, you know, postage stamp size issues. Should the Jack in the Box have a drive-up window or not? And sometimes you spend 3 or 4 hours in an evening council chambers just arguing or debating or deliberating over something like that. That's not altogether rewarding for somebody like me. I have a tendency to want to work where the real human pain is happening. And county government really opens that up. It really creates opportunities to deal with issues involving the homeless, to deal with issues involving people who are suffering from mental health issues, to deal with issues of poverty, and to try to do something about it, to try to make a difference. And you can see yourself making a difference at times. We do make good decisions once in a while, despite popular opinion from time to time. And those good decisions, in the case of a county, are changing the lives of 2 million people all at once. And again, there's something very rewarding about being able to do that.
What role does staff play in all of this? You know, I know you do a lot of study yourself and all that, but you are in a position now to have staff, both as a council member and now as a supervisor, and of course now you're the president of the Board of Supervisors.
I've been fortunate to have brilliant people around me, people that, in the case of my chief of staff, at one point, you know, turned down an opportunity to go to Hastings Law School to keep working in this environment. And it goes on down the line like that. We have about a half a dozen people who are absolutely committed. You know, the office gets branded, you know, in a political context after the name of the politician. It's kind of an interesting thing. And you know, I think most of us have a lot more humility than what it may appear when you say, well, that's, you know, Cortese's office or Cortese's district or so-and-so's office. The reality is it's that staff, it's the infrastructure of the office, that's the human infrastructure that's doing things for people on a day-to-day basis. And the people that are surrounding me love what they're doing.
Well, couldn't be better. We're going to take a little break right now. When we come back, I'd like to talk a little bit more about constituent services and the economic circumstances we're facing. Small stuff. Be right back.
Hi, I'm California State Senator Joe Simitian. We're fortunate to live in exciting but challenging times. It's a new day for America and for the state of California, and you and I can both play a role through our Democratic Party. Democratic Party is a great way to make sure that the views and values we hold dear are expressed in the decision-making at the national, state, and local level. It's also a great opportunity to spend some time with like-minded folks who are committed to making our community, our state, and our nation a better place. So find the Democratic Party opportunity in your neighborhood, your community. Call 408-445-9500. You can make a difference, you can have a good time doing it, and you can have the satisfaction of knowing that you played a role in this next chapter in American history.
Welcome back to Democratic Television, and our guest, President of the Board of Supervisors, Dave Cortese. Dave, it's hard for me to get used to that.
Yeah,
Chair,
hard.
President, but it's all the same thing.
Hard for me to get used to it because my father served on the Board of Supervisors from '68 through 1980, and you know, it gets kind of embedded in your mind if you're involved with politics. Chair is what it should be, but they changed it a couple years ago, so we go with the flow, right?
Exactly. You know, we're modern that way. When we took a break, we were talking about the work of the office, and I know you deal with a lot of policy stuff and, you know, life and death issues, but there's also an important place for people who have issues that they don't know where to turn. So, you know, and I know that as constituent services. Is that an important emphasis for your staff?
Well, dealing with constituents is a huge part of what we do. We We focus on outreach constantly. These districts are pretty big, so it's challenging to get from neighborhood to neighborhood. I cover half of Sunnyvale, all of Milpitas, Alviso, all of North San Jose, the East Hills of San Jose, all the way into Evergreen. So we really, have to focus on time management and getting out there. But the thing that's really rewarding is working with my staff to make sure that they understand that the office needs to be known as a place where if you need to be hooked up with government services, feel free to call us first. We want you to call us first. So don't worry. A lot of times people these days, as you well know, Steve, are so many layers of government, they aren't sure, do I call the water district? Do I call Zoe Lofgren's office? Do I call the city? Do I call Dave Cortese's office? Just call us, and we will figure that out for you. We will connect you, if it's an immigration issue, for example, with Zoe Lofgren's office. They do a great job with that. But people that don't know that should call us, let us connect. 3 or 4 days, we'll follow up. We'll make sure that things are going well and you're on your way. We really do want to be known for that, and my staff does a great job with that.
Well, let me ask you, what the heck does a member of the Board of Supervisors do? Let's get into Supervisor 101 here briefly.
Well, we have a $4 billion budget. Like the board of directors of any entity, public or private, our first and foremost responsibility is to make sure that the money gets invested in a way that those same constituents are happy with. And I think for us Democrats, it's about quality of life, and it's about mitigating some of the hardships that people are dealing with, especially in county government. Not only the court and criminal justice system and the juvenile justice system exist at the county, but Valley Medical Center, the health and hospital system, it's the largest public health and hospital system in Northern California by far. To put it in perspective, Valley Medical Center has more employees than the entire city of San Jose and a larger budget, and that's just one piece of county government. We have social services, general assistance, CalWorks, what people used to call the Welfare to Work program, and then a regional park system that's larger than almost any of the 58 counties in the state. So there's a lot to oversee. We don't, of course, try to micromanage that. We have a great county executive. He reports to us, and about 5 other executives, legal, et cetera, that report to us, and it's through them that we try to carry out the business of the county.
That's a lot to be responsible for. And it's hard to not bring up the fiscal circumstances that our national, state, local government, school districts and all are dealing with. And what insights do you have there? It must be, I would think, frightening to be responsible for so many services and yet not certain if you'll be able to pay for them.
It is frightening. It's a concern, of course, at the county level and the city level for that matter. We're under a mandate to have our budgets adopted by June 30th. July 1st, we have to have a new budget in place. There's no borrowing or indebtedness or printing money. So, in some sense, it's going to happen. It doesn't make the decisions any easier, especially when they do involve real human pain and suffering. The last thing you want to do as a public servant is anything that's going to exacerbate human suffering for people, but in effect, that's the business that we're in. I think most people have the sense out there that government's become far too polarized at this point. By now, people have probably seen what's gone on in Wisconsin and in other places in this country, not just California, where positional debates, black and white, either or, this kind of duality in government just doesn't get you anywhere except grief. And we need to get back to a collaborative approach. We need leaders that are committed to a collaborative approach to resolving problems, and we'll be fine. But right now, that's a big hurdle. We certainly have way too many elected officials that are absolutely purely partisan in this country, and it can't be that way.
We have a Democratic governor in California and someone who's been through leadership, albeit at an earlier time, but who seems to be coming in ready to solve problems and make very hard decisions. How do you let Governor Brown know hey, here's what we need in Santa Clara County or all counties?
Well, great question. Just a few weeks ago, I had the privilege of giving the State of the County address, which really lets people know what the fiscal condition is of the county. We'll be doing budget reductions again of about $200 million over the next few months. So I got to remind people of that interesting news. But I also had an opportunity to really deliver in today's world of information and speed of information, really to deliver what I could in terms of a message to Governor Brown that we're all for local control, but it has to come with the resources that we need to get the job done. We like his idea of realignment, so-called realignment. We like the idea of local autonomy, of giving us even more responsibility. We don't fear that, and we don't shy away from it. But it's got to be packaged in such a way that we can fiscally do the job. So we're delivering that message in every way that we can, and we'll continue to do so.
But I want to talk a little bit more about the message in your State of the County, because I saw so many emails afterwards. I was there. I couldn't get in. It was so packed. I think there was so much anticipation. But the word on the street and the internet was that you hit a home run. You talked about the year of the child and how we can't forsake our responsibilities, which some might have said, how can you talk about what we're going to do for folks in this era of austerity?
Yeah, a lot of government, as you know, is more about how you deploy people, how you deploy resources, what your values are, and then how you commit to those values, as opposed to just straight fiscal ledger keeping. And I really try to approach things that way. I put out a very robust juvenile justice agenda this year, and I think a very robust agenda for children in general. We're going to resurrect something at the county that used to be called School Link Services, and it just got cut and cut over the years, where we deploy all these county services that we were talking about a few minutes ago right on high school campuses. And so people don't think that's pie in the sky. We're doing it a little differently this time. We've got a grant, an outside grant. It won't come from general fund that our mental health department has turned over to us to start hiring or deploying, I should say, the social service workers to do that. Probably the biggest statement I made in the State of the County is that I'd like to see juvenile hall go out of business. And juvenile hall, as we now know it, is really the wrong way to be dealing with about 80% of the kids that you would find there if you paid a visit there today. On any given day, there's about 350 children in this county incarcerated, where they really should be being dealt with non-governmental agencies, community-based agencies, people like the Bill Wilson Center. Mm-hmm. If you deal with them that way, statistically, we know 97% of them will not be incarcerated again. There's only a 3% recidivism rate. Wow. For children who bypass the incarceration or are immediately put into the kind of programs that are rehabilitative and restorative. So that's where we want to go. The whole agenda is laid out to get that done, and we're already making strides. Next month, something we announced in the State of the County, which is a direct referral program that this year will take 3,000 kids and move them into community-based agencies before they're ever booked for arrest. After they're caught, but before they're actually booked, they will be referred into programs. 3,000 kids this year. That'll go into effect next month.
Wow. So I feel a sense of optimism with the kind of leadership that I'm sure you and your colleagues are engaging in to make our community a better place. We may have people that want to get hold of you that have some ideas. Do you have a website or a phone number or an email address? Or?
Yes, we do have a website. It's www.supervisorcortese.org. The phone number is 408-299-5030, 5030. We welcome inquiries. Of course, from the website, you can get to us by email. I'm on Facebook, and you can find me there. And I handle 99% of the inquiries that come in that are directed to me are responded to by me. So I look forward to hearing from people.
So that's why you're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week.
Those are some long weeks sometimes, but I love it. It's a labor of love.
Yeah, well, there's so much to do, so much service to provide, so much, hopefully, modeling of behavior and ideas that can be exported in other communities, since I don't think we have a very polarized community in that sense. We don't have, different sides trying to make political points or really trying to do the right thing.
People really want to work together here. And, within the Democratic Party, I've always found that if you're on the right track, people will form alliances with you, irrespective if they think they're going to be running against you at some point in the future or not. It's not competitive in that way. It's a party here in Santa Clara County that's absolutely been dedicated to the common good in that respect, and that's what makes it a wonderful party to be a part of.
I bet Dominic is very proud of you.
Well, I hope so. I guess that's the story of most father-son relationships. He left, some big shoes to fill, but was also a great inspiration in many ways, as was my grandfather, who arrived here 100 years ago in this county.
Wow.
And started the whole thing. So I try to fall back on that as much as I can. But I have my own values too, and
Sure.
More than anything, I try to live by those values.
Good. Well, Dave, thanks very much for being on Democratic Television.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be here.
Thanks for watching DTV. Give us a call at 408-445-9500 or visit our website, www.sccdp.org. Help make a difference, and we'll see you on the campaign trail.